Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dumper regret, thus dumper forced regret. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing dumper regret, thus dumper forced regret. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need them to regret the breakup. But what happens if this regret is more forced than authentic? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 points to consider regarding dumper regret, thus dumper forced regret. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is dumper regret. Now this is what we are looking for as a dumpee. If you want to try to get your ex back after being dumped, you need your ex-dumper to feel regret. If they don't feel regret, then you can't get them back. If they don't believe that they have made the wrong choice, then they will never reconsider their decision and get to the stage where they likely reach out to you, and through the communication stage and the meeting stage, you can one day reconnect. It all begins with dumper regret. It all begins with them feeling, you know what, I think I've made the wrong choice. If your ex-dumper doesn't get to this stage, you can't get your ex back in any way, shape or form regarding something that you might find palatable. So if you want your relationship to be rekindled, this is the golden moment. Now you might be thinking, well, how do I get my ex-dumper to feel regret? Well, that is why I suggest that as a dumpee, most of the time, you should be implementing my version of the no contact rule. Now, for those of you who are not aware of no contact, this is something that lots of people suggest you implement if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back. Now, there are many different versions of the no contact rule that you can find online, and I believe that my version will give you the best possible chance of success. So I suggest that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, ring the bell for notifications, and check out the playlist I have on there called the no contact rule. If you check that out, you'll be able to immerse yourself in my version of the rule and understand why I believe it will give you that best possible chance of success. If you implement my version of the no contact rule, that is what you can do by and large as an initial step from a perspective of a dumpee. Now this is something which is generalized. I keep saying most of the time, by and large, this is because I can't specifically speak of your situation unless I were to know it. Now some of you may want to speak with me via my audio coaching service, and we can discuss things in a lot more depth to understand where exactly you are and whether you have a caveat to my version of a rule, where maybe never contacting your ex again unless they contact you first isn't the best move. Now you would be in the minority if that is the case, but that sometimes happens. But generally, we have to suggest through my version of a no contact rule, the starting point is that you don't contact your ex unless they contact you first. Now maybe you feel you have to. Maybe you feel you have a necessary reason to reach out to your ex-dumper. Well, that's fine. Okay, if it's genuinely necessary, that is absolutely fine. We're not speaking about that though. We're speaking about if you're trying to reach out to persuade, to beg, or to plead. This is not going to help you in the majority of instances. This isn't going to give you the dumper regret that you are hoping for. If you chase your ex, you're going to be bothering them. You know, they're not going to be thinking to themselves, oh, actually, I've made a big mistake here. I want to get back together with my dumpee. If you are annoying them, remember, they've ended the relationship. Remember, they've got to this point because sadly they lost romantic emotional attraction for you. They are not feeling particularly interested in you, certainly not in a romantic sense right now, because if they were, they wouldn't have ended the relationship. So you are not in the best position at this stage. So the last thing you want to do is make things worse. The last thing you want to do is annoy your ex. And that is the problem. Those people who decide to do the opposite to my version of a no contact rule, those people who decide to do the opposite to what I suggest after many, many years of research and experiences and speaking to a lot of people by my audio coaching service. If you want to go against what generally works, that's absolutely fine. That's your choice. I can't say it won't work, but what I can say is it's very unlikely to work. Now, there is no 100% guaranteed way to get an ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing fails 100% of the time. But what I can say is that it's not likely to work. Maybe you're that 1 in 100. Maybe you chase your ex, you're that 1 in 100, and you get your ex back and you live happily ever after. That's wonderful. Congratulations. But I can't give you that advice. I'm going to give you the advice that I've built up through the knowledge, through all of my research, my audio coaching service, and all of the years of experience that I've had within this industry. I will give you that best chance of success. Because if you go against that and you find success, that in essence was lucky. And I don't want to ask and suggest you do something which you're going to have to need to be very lucky to get the success. So let's just reiterate the main part of point number 1. And that is dumper regret is the golden moment that you need as a dumpee to get your ex back. The best way to get dumper regret is, generally speaking, to implement my version of a no contact rule, which by and large has the main focal point of never contacting your ex again unless they contact you first, unless you do have some of these caveats to my version of a rule, which of course I don't know of unless I've spoken to you about your specific unique situation. That is how you can increase your chance of getting dumper regret in your ex's mind. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is dumper forced regret. Now this is about today's podcast. We're speaking about dumper regret, which we have already just spoken about, versus dumper forced regret. And this is a very important difference. Now, what is dumper forced regret? Well, dumper forced regret is when your ex, the dumper, starts to feel a level of regret, but it's not for an authentic reason. And the reason it's not authentic is because it has been developed via something other than my version of a no contact rule, which of course we've just spoken about in point number 1. Dumper forced regret is something which could be developed, for instance, if you as a dumpee were to behave in certain ways which are going to have an effect on your ex, the dumper, or at least on some dumpers. It won't work on all of them, but some of them it will. However, it's not likely to work in the way and the length of time that you may be hoping for. Of course, if you want your ex back, you want them back forevermore. You don't want them back temporary. So I suggest you listen through to the rest of today's podcast so I can fully explain what I mean about the differences. And that's why we're doing the whole dumper regret versus dumper forced regret. So dumper forced regret can be developed if the dumpee starts to behave in a bitter way. Now, as a dumpee, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, I'm a bit bitter. I'm angry, I'm frustrated. I'm speaking, I'm acting in ways that normally I wouldn't, but I feel I've got every right to. Now listen, as a dumpee, I fully understand. I empathise for how you're feeling. Yes, you're going to be feeling these negative emotions. You're going to be feeling anger. You're going to be feeling frustration. You're going to be feeling bitterness. Now, I don't suggest you hold on to these feelings for any longer than you feel you need to. And you might think, well, I can't get rid of them. This is how I feel now. Well, listen, I do believe you can eventually work through these feelings and come out the other side. Negative emotions don't help you. They are wasted emotions. They're not going to bring you happiness. They're not going to bring you fulfillment. But I digress, and we need to speak about how being bitter could theoretically develop dumper forced regret. Well, if you're acting in a bitter way, maybe you are one of those people who's trying to chase your ex and you're acting bitter, or maybe this is through friend of a friend passing a message on social media, whatever it may be. If you're behaving in an angry, bitter way, your ex-dumper might hear about this, see this, hear this, and think, gosh, I can't believe what's happened to my dumpee, and I've caused this. I ended a relationship and now look how they're acting. I can't believe I've done this to them. I'm actually starting to regret the breakup. I wish I'd never done this to them. I wish they were not behaving in this way. I can't believe how my actions have caused this change in my dumpee. I'm feeling regret. And that is an example of dumper forced regret. Now, as a dumpee, you might think, well, that's fine, that's great. You know, I don't care how I get to the point of them feeling regret. I just want them to. Well, again, please keep listening through, because this is very, very important. Now, the second element of point number 2 is if as a dumpee, you're being forceful. Maybe you're making threats. Maybe you're saying things such as, if we don't get back together, then this, and this is going to happen. If you don't come back to me now, then I'm going to do this, and this. All of these terrible, forceful threats, these are the types of things which, again, can develop a level of regret in a dumper's mind. But it isn't genuine, authentic regret. Instead, it is dumper forced regret. You are forcing them to feel regret by your actions, by your threats, by your demands. You're developing this in their mind. Yes, they're feeling regret, but it has been forced. Now, the third element of point number 2 about dumper forced regret is emotional collapse. Now, as a dumpee, you might feel that you have no power whatsoever in your behaviour, your attitude, and unfortunately you go through a breakdown. This is something very, very sad which can happen to dumpees, where their emotions fall in a way where I would describe it as an emotional collapse. Whether you would call this a depression, whether you would call this an emotional breakdown, whatever the exact specific explanation, I'm going to just give an umbrella term of an emotional collapse. As a dumpee, this isn't something about you trying to do deliberately. You're not trying to be vindictive. You're not trying to behave in a bad, angry, bitter way. You're just feeling absolutely distraught, and your behaviour is becoming worrying. Now again, maybe your dumper has seen this in person, maybe they've been told about it, maybe they've read it. Whatever it may be, they start to feel worried. They start to feel concerned. They start to feel pity. They start to feel a wide range of emotions, which ultimately brings them to the point of feeling regret for ending the relationship. I can't believe that I've ended the relationship and my dumpee is now literally on their knees. Maybe they've lost their job even due to the fact they can no longer go to work and do a good job because of the emotional turmoil they're going through. I feel terrible as a dumper. I can't believe what I've done to my dumpee. I now feel regret. But as you know from point number 2, again, this is forced regret. It's dumper forced regret. As a dumpee, you didn't mean, in this instance, for them to feel dumper forced regret. You didn't mean for them to feel this way. It wasn't a deliberate act, but unfortunately, you had an emotional mental breakdown, and therefore, this is the result. Your ex-dumper felt pity, concern, worry, and now they feel dumper forced regret. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about dumper regret versus dumper force regret. And point number 3 is what works. So this is where we really do the comparison about how to try and get your ex back when we consider the 2 types of regret that your ex-dumper can feel, whether this is authentic regret or dumper force regret. Well, as I said in point number 1, dumper regret is what you want. You want your ex-dumper to regret ending the relationship because they miss you, because they desire you, because they crave you, because they feel they made a big error of judgment due, by and large, generally speaking, you implementing my version of a no-contact rule. You're not bothering them, you're not giving them anything to worry about, you're just living your life to the full and becoming a more valuable person in their mind. That is what we want as a dumpee. That will give you the best possible chance of success of not just getting your ex back, but for living together ever more beyond that. But now we have to compare that to dumper force regret and what we were speaking about in point number 2. Now, although your ex-dumper is feeling regret during those moments in point number 2, it is not the type of regret that is going to last forevermore. And the reason for this is that it is not built on strong foundations. This feeling of regret that your ex-dumper is feeling when it's forced is not authentic, it's not real, it's due to your actions. Even if it was due to your emotional breakdown, you didn't actually mean to create a scenario where your ex-dumper felt this way. It is still, in essence, what you're doing, how you're acting, what you're saying. This is causing your ex-dumper to feel regret, but not because they've regrown romantic emotional attraction. Whether it was due to them feeling scared about the threats you might be making, maybe it it was due to your bad behaviour, and then feeling like, oh, I can't believe I've caused all of this turmoil within our friendship group and our community. I just want things to calm down. I can't be dealing with the stress and the anxiety of them bombarding me anymore. I just regret this. I want to get back together. It's not real. It's not built on romantic emotional attraction. Their feelings towards you haven't grown, not in the way which romance needs. And therefore, the foundations are not strong. They're built on sand. And sadly for you as a dumpee, things will fall away as quickly as they perhaps got back together. So if you receive contact from your ex-dumper, or maybe it's due to you chasing them, and they decide they want to get back together with you, you've got to remember that if you forced their hand, if this is dumper forced regret, then sadly, irrespective of whether they say they feel remorse for ending the relationship, if it's not true, genuine romantic emotional attraction which has been regrown, then sadly, not too far down the line, they will likely end the relationship again. This isn't authentic. This isn't real. And that is the difference between dumper regret and dumper forced regret. That is the difference when we verse them against one another. Dumper regret is authentic, based on romantic emotional attraction, and can potentially last forevermore. Dumper forced regret is temporary. Yes, they feel regret, but it's not going to be for the long term. And sadly, that means you haven't really got your ex back. Now, if you believe that this podcast has helped you, please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.